Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Lauren. To get started, I'm just going to introduce the speakers. On the line, we have Ray Azarm, who is our Vice President of Enterprise Practice. And we also have Matt Maines, who's the Director of Project Management, who will be leading the live demo. We also have our resident FOIA consultant, Anston Williams, here as well.
All right, so what we're going to go ahead and do, guys, is get into the workflow. We're going to actually show you both the web portal and the actual ArkCase FOIA application that your FOIA officers, your FOIA approvers, folks that are fulfilling public record requests or FOIA requests would essentially see. And we're actually going to go through essentially the use case of processing a request from front to back. First thing we're going to go ahead and do, though, is kind of give you a lay of the land. So as you can see here, you have what we call our web portal. This is a web portal we provide as an option to leverage. Once again, you can design your own web portal and utilize our APIs for ingestion, or you can leverage our web portal, which comes with 3 pages. One is specifically a FOIA request page. This is a fully configurable web form, so you can remove fields, change fields, use it as is. You can change the actual mandatory versus optional fields. And then you also have what we call our request status page. This allows the end user, the requester, to be able to track their actual request and the status where it is in the overall process. We also have a reading room that allows the end user to search for existing requests that have been requested before and fulfilled and possibly shared with the public. There are different types of configuration rules where you can actually share an individual request with the public after X number of times it's been released to an individual requester. So you also have the ability to manually share it with the actual public through the application, and we'll talk a little bit about that. Additionally, we actually have the ArkCase FOIA application that we'll talk about today, and I'm going to go ahead and start there by logging in with an admin user. You're noticing I'm logging in with a manual login. We do have full support for single sign-on, so if you have requirements or customer requirements around single sign-on, we do support that out of the box through basic configuration. We support many different protocols for that. What you're noticing here is the landing page, and this is actually what every user would essentially see when they log in. And I want to tell you a little bit about the application before we jump right into the workflow. So as you can see here, we have on the left-hand side, we have all of the navigation or the different modules available throughout this application. This is an admin view, which means that I am seeing everything. We're actually going to use one other user today that actually has a lot less access, and you'll notice that he just doesn't see these modules. He also will have a different dashboard. His personal dashboard will look a little bit different because his role-based access control is different. Everything in the application is role-based driven. So as you'll see here, this dashboard is specific to my user that is logged in. Me being an admin, I can manipulate this dashboard. This is my jumping off location. So I can jump directly into specific places in the application. Maybe I wanted to see any of the 2 requests that are in the fulfill queue. If I click on that individual column in the actual widget, it takes me out to the queues module, and you can see I've got access to all the different queues. Not everyone will have access to every queue. The great thing about the dashboard is that you can configure these widgets or extend them to meet all of your different values or metadata or KPIs that you're looking to track. And then you can obviously hyperlink it to where you want in the application. So maybe I wanted to look at a detailed request. It's actually going to jump me right into the request module, and then I can see a different view of a request from this perspective. The queue and request modules are very similar in the way that they are handled. The request can come in and go through a queue workflow, or maybe you have a small team and you have one person that does all of your FOIA requests. Well, they can do that right here from the request module and take it all the way through the process or workflow from a single screen. We'll use a little bit of both of those modules today. Additionally, we'll talk about some of these other modules as we go through the workflow. We may have time towards the end to go into some of these in detail, but I do want to point out some of the specific ones. We do have a search module. This is a full text search and full metadata search. It does have a type ahead, and it allows you to do a like search, exact phrase searches. And as you can see here, it pulls back essentially all metadata and text throughout the application. We also do allow for OCRing in the background, so if you upload image-only files, we will do our best to OCR each and every one of those, index that content, and then allow you to search across it. You do have the ability to configure all of these elements, so whether it's categories or what we call facets here, to be able to narrow your information, even the columns, you can export this data, you can sort the columns, you can remove columns, things along those lines. The reports module is where our canned reports are. Here's just a sample set. We do support all the DOJ metrics. So once again, you may be working with a federal agency, or you may be from a federal agency that wants to utilize ArkCase FOIA. We do support DOJ reports out of the box, but you do have the ability to create your own reports in the actual reports designer, which is a drag and drop designer that can be leveraged from the admin module. We'll talk a little bit about cost and time tracking. You do have the ability to track time and cost associated to each request, and that allows you to track the time and your charge role and possibly the individual hourly amount for that role. And then it essentially ties to your billing and invoicing tool within each request, and we'll talk a little bit about that as we go through the workflow. And then the last thing that we'll end with in this kind of overview is this is where the brains of the application is. This is the admin module that allows you to configure everything from security, access to individual modules, granular privileges, creating your own groups, your own roles within the application. Once again, out of the box, all of this is predefined, so you will have out of the box roles. You have, once you essentially sync your Active Directory or your Open Active Directory, your Open LDAP, whatever it may be, you can essentially tie those to existing ArkCase roles out of the box and be up and running within minutes. But you do have the ability to extend a lot of that. And we'll talk about changing some of those things, restricting access to certain queues, the ability to change labels. Unfortunately, we won't have enough time to cover everything today, but we'll touch on some of the high-level configuration items. With that being said, let's go ahead and go into the workflow and show you really how that process interacts with not only the web portal, but the actual application. So the first thing that we're going to do is go right back out to the web portal, and we're going to actually go ahead and put in, at minimum, we're going to put in the mandatory fields. So I'm going to go through here and just type in this information. Once again, this is a configurable form, so you do have the ability to change the information that you want to collect from your individual requesters. You may have an actual form that you use today that is very specific to your specific agency or maybe a customer that you're working with. Once again, this is fully configurable and can be changed very easily. We're going to go in here and we're just going to put in a basic description. I just want the actual 2018 budget report. Once again, this is a full rich text field, which means you can add paragraph after paragraph. You also have the ability to just put it in a single a line item, whatever it may be. You can also specify the date range to help the actual FOIA office or the public request office narrow down and get your results back to you quicker. You also have the ability to upload in certain situations where you have to add a description document. Maybe you're looking for a very detailed set of information. Maybe you have to actually give a consent document to consent who you are or provide a proof of identity. You can upload those right into the actual form. You do have the ability to specify category, delivery method. Maybe you want this to be submitted through the portal, but you don't want to actually get it electronically back through email. You want to actually do it through mail. Once again, these are all optional out of the box. You do have the ability to request a waiver or let the folks know in the actual FOIA or public request office, what you're willing to spend. So let's just say I'm willing to spend $100. When I submit this, you'll notice I've got a preview page here. It gives me a preview of everything I've populated in this specific form. I do have the ability to go back and edit this, or in this case, I can go ahead and let the system know or the robot know that I'm not a robot, and I'll go ahead and submit this off. As you can see here, it is going to tell you that you have submitted this successfully, and you will essentially get an email from the system automatically. Once again, this is just part of the standard workflow that ArkCase offers. ArkCase actually offers what we call a correspondence module, where you can build your correspondences and dictate whether you want them to be sent out manually or automatically. Before I actually go into the application and show you what this new web portal submission looks like and start processing it, I do want to go ahead quickly and open up the actual email. So this is the email that automatically was sent. Once again, you can actually configure your own logo. It did tell the end user what the information was, kind of what was processed, who it's been assigned to, and once again, the most important is their ID that they can actually use to track the information. Additionally, we also submitted what we call a correspondence. This is a correspondence that can be configured by the actual office. And once again, this is just a document. It can be sent in Word or it can be sent in PDF. And as you can see here, it actually used our correspondence template with merge terms to populate the actual document. So now the individual requester has record of their actual received request that has been sent to the office. So let's actually take a look very quickly before we jump into the actual application. Let's jump into the request status page. So immediately, the individual user has the ability to type in the necessary mandatory information and see at any time where the request is in the process. Currently, it's in the review stage. Okay, so let's go into the application and take a look at this. Since I'm in as an admin user, I'm going to go ahead and log out and use that secondary user we talked about. I'm going to use Owen Officer. This is the actual part of this demo. We actually assign it directly to a specific user and group. And as you can see, Owen has a little bit different view. His modules are very restrictive. His dashboard's much different. He doesn't even have access to the queues module at all. His only job in this specific demo is to essentially take any requests that are coming into the intake queue and review them. Make sure that they're complete. So let's go ahead and take the one that we just created and jump right into it. He will only have access to see the ones that are assigned directly to him. That's the default view in the request module. And you'll notice all the information that has come in. So high-level information up at the top gives you when it was created, when it was officially received, who the actual assigned group is, what is the actual overall due date. Right now we have it configured to be processed in 20 days. That's the federal mandate of 20 days to respond unless there's an extension of some sort. We also have a due date calculator. You can control that through admin, and we'll talk about that towards the end. Once again, he has the ability to do a couple of things. He can review the overall data that came in. He also can review the information about the requester. He could even go into, and once again, you can use either the tree view on the left-hand side or the icons on the right. He also can see the actual document section of this request. So you're noticing there's a lot of content associated, whether it's metadata or actual physical documents associated to an individual request. The first documents you're going to notice is we create a request form and a request acknowledgement letter. These are the automatic correspondence templates that are created on the fly. Once again, these are fully configurable forms, and you also don't have to leverage these at all if you decide not to leverage them. So at this point, he would probably open this up. He may even open up the request form in our viewer and make sure that the information looks appropriate. So he can view it in our viewer. He can look at, once again, the details. He can see if there's any other information that he needs to review. He can see the description. He can see if the person wanted to waive fees, things along those lines. He can also expand this, take a look at it in a different way, in a different view, to actually see the information. And we'll talk a little bit about the bells and whistles of this viewer as we go through the workflow. So long story short, let's just assume due to time sensitivity today, let's go ahead and have this be assigned. So maybe the goal of Owen is just to triage this, make sure it has the information. If the information is not correct, he could send an email directly out to the requester by clicking send email and ask for additional detail to narrow the criteria. So we're going to go ahead and we are going to assign this to my user. We're going to use my admin user the rest of the day, so then I can show you all the different bells and whistles. At this point, as soon as it's been assigned out, Owen can complete this task and he is done. He can then move over and he can actually see that this is now moved on to the next step in the overall workflow. So let's go ahead and log out and come in as the actual admin user, Matt. Additionally, what's going on in the background, as things in the application are assigned, whether they're request assignments, whether they're task assignments, maybe a new document's been uploaded, we can actually set up email notifications for specific events to then send out emails to individual users. So as I got assigned this individual request, it sent me an email to let me know that I was assigned to actually work on it. And as you can see here, it just came through to let me know I have a new assignment. And I can actually jump right into that by hitting Open Request, and it'll take me right to the application. And it will actually load the actual request here. So as you can see here, we do have a new request, and I'm viewing it from the request module. But I do have the ability to view it from the queues module, which is what I'm going to do now. I do have access to all the queues since I am an admin user, but let's just imagine that Matt is the person that all he does is fulfill the request. So his goal is to look at this request and basically find all the documents, redact all the documents, make sure that everything is done. This is where most folks will spend a majority of their time. We'll show a little bit in admin where you can configure how many days an individual request can stay in each of the individual queues. So what I want to show you here is that essentially you can see that this one has been in the queue for 0 days, and essentially you have X number of days still to complete this. So you have 11 days to complete this, but you have 20 overall days to complete the entire request. So I've got 11 days to fulfill this. So at the end of the day, I can process this in 11 or less days, then I will not be overdue essentially with this request. So this is what it looks like from the queue details perspective. So normal day-to-day process, I'm a person that actually fulfills the request. I will get assigned by an email. I'll open that email, take me right out to this actual page. And the first thing that I'm going to do is obviously review the information. What do they want? Who is the person? What's the information that they're seeking? So descriptions to 2018 budget report. If I still need more data, once again, I can send an email directly out to the end user or the requester that requested this. I can clarify that information. I can send emails out and back into the system very easily. Let's assume that I do have the right information that I need. I can do quite a few different things. This is a full-fledged document management tool built right into your actual request form, or excuse me, your request module. So as you can see here, if I right-click on a folder, I can do a lot of different things. I can add a subfolder. I can go out and pick a document, whether it's on my network drive, my local drive, a repository that I have access to. I also can search within the application for other documents that have been used in responses. So maybe you want to go out and find a document that's already been fully redacted that you know has been part of another response. You can go out and do that. You also have the ability to generate correspondences. So maybe you are planning to deny this for some reason. You can take this through a denial path. You also have the ability to send a final production letter, as I have here as an example, with your end result or your response. You also have the ability, like I said, to go out and pick a doc type and actually pull in some files, and I'm going to use a few samples today. So when I upload these documents, a couple of things are actually happening. The system is actually uploading these into the content repository, whatever that back-end content repository may be. We do have full support for any format, whether it be PDFs, docs, like you have docx, spreadsheets, EML files, rich media files, whether they're audio, video, those types of things. There's no limit on the actual size. So as you can see here, we have not only uploaded these, but if any of these were image only, we would have sent these over through the OCR process if you have that configured to be turned on, which would then be trying to create your brand new version, and that's where you see the version control here. So as we work on these documents, the version control will be updated. So let's go ahead and load one of these documents in the viewer. I can load as many documents in the viewer that I want to. It's just going to add additional tabs to my actual window here. Maybe I don't want to see the details on the right side. I can actually expand and take a look at this document. Okay, so I can scan this document. Maybe I need to redact certain areas. Let's go ahead and let's just do a manual redaction. So we'll go in here, we'll redact that area. Maybe we need to redact this area. Maybe we only need to redact this word. You can do as many redactions as you want. And then you also can specify the actual exemption code. These are the sample list of exemption codes. For those of you that are familiar with federal exemption codes, you'll notice that's what is here. And we can go through and add exemption codes, or essentially you can burn things without adding an exemption code associated. If I hit the Save button, I actually am just saving the annotations. So once again, I still have the ability to select and move this around, select and delete it. I could do a lot to this document. This is not affecting the original version. It's only putting an overlay. So at some point when I do decide to burn this, I actually will create a brand new version 2. So essentially I'm not affecting the original version. Maybe I want to go ahead and load the other document in and view that additionally. So I can go ahead and I can also double click and view that. I'm going to load this, this document I call the SSN document. This is just a sample document that allows me to do what we call essentially key term searches to find information in this document. So instead of me redacting one by one like I did on the budget sample document, I actually can go over to this little search and I can actually search for either keywords. So maybe I wanted to search for, FOIA. I can actually search and it will highlight any time that it actually sees FOIA, and it'll narrow down the pages. As you can see, it is highlighted here. It starts on the first one. I also could go in and do things like Social Security search. So I want to do a pattern search. And as you can see here, it's going to pull back the pattern. Okay. The great thing about this is not only is it pulling back the pattern, but we also have the ability to redact all matches, or we can redact each match one at a time, and it'll take us through a systematic way. Well, for time purposes, let's just go ahead and select to redact all of them. And I'm going to go ahead and select, obviously, X6 for the PII here, and I'm going to go ahead and hit OK. And once again, now, if you look at any of these, just to show you, it automatically put X6 on every single one of these. So you can do redactions in bulk to actually allow for speeding through this actual document and redacting specific information you know is going to be prevalent. So just one of the options there. So let's go ahead and assume that we want to save this information. And in this case, I'm going to go ahead and burn one of the documents now. So we'll go ahead and click the burn. And what it's going to do here is it's not only going to save the original version, it's going to actually create a brand new version for us to view so you can see what the actual burn version looks like. So it's going to refresh our screen and it's going to reload our version 2 document. Additionally, we're saving, once again, this version to the content repository. That's going on behind the scenes at all time. So at any one time, if you're a records manager, you can browse out and see that information. As you can see here now, we're on version 2, and you can see all the different actual redactions throughout this document as you tab through. Okay, a lot of other bells and whistles, but due to time, I'm not going to be able to show everything, but you do have the ability to zoom in and out. You can jump to different pages. You can fit to width, fit to page, things along those lines. Okay. So let's just assume that this user has fulfilled everything. We spent the time we wanted to spend on this. Maybe as part of this process, we needed to send a task to one or many folks to help us work on this. Maybe you wanted to send a task over to Sally to actually help you research and find the documents. You could do that right here from the actual request window. And it would keep track of all the tasks and the status and what you're waiting on to get done. So let's go ahead and complete this by hitting the next or the complete button, and it will change the fulfill queue to the approve queue. I'm showing this from an admin perspective so I can show you that I can just kind of take this request and fulfilling this request to a specific workflow. But once again, if I only had access to the fulfill queue, I'd only see a next button. basically what that would do is it would just save the current request, send it over to the approved queue to the next queue, and it would queue up the next request for me to work on in my queue. But for the purposes of this demo, I'm going to take you all the way through the workflow. So let's assume that my job as the approver is to look at, once again, the detailed information. Maybe I need to go in and review the documents. I could go through and see any information associated, see that the redactions that are already there. Maybe I don't want that redaction. Maybe it doesn't need to be redacted. I can actually go in. At this point, I could do my part and delete it. I then can say resave. I can go back through the document, continue to review, make sure that these documents are done and appropriate. And I'm going to assume, due to time purposes, I'm going to go ahead and do the same thing. I'm just going to burn this other document we didn't burn yet. Maybe it didn't need to be burned, or maybe it needed to be reviewed and approved by me first. While that's refreshing, you also have the ability at any stage in the process to either add an extension. So we can configure how many days that you can extend. By default, it's 10 days, but you can add a calculation for extending this request, and it will send an automatic correspondence letter to let the requester know why you're extending it. You also have the ability to send this through litigation. Basically, it would hit an additional queue, which we call general counsel. If you do not select that, it will bypass that queue completely. So thus far, just to summarize, we have had Owen take this through intake, review it, send it to someone to start fulfilling. Matt has now fulfilled it, taken it through approval, has now burned all of his actual copies, and he is now ready to essentially take this to essentially be ready to release this. So what we're going to do is we're actually going to take both of these documents and we're going to actually copy them right into the response folder. The reason that we're actually copying them into the response folder is that this response folder, anything that is in this folder is what gets delivered to the end user, or we know that has been approved by the internal team to be sent back out or printed and snail mailed, or essentially be printed and ready to be picked up, that type of thing. Additionally, you do have the ability to generate what we call installments. So there may be a situation where you get a request that may take you extended amounts of time. It may take you 45, 50, 60 days to process this, and you want to send batches of essentially response documents to the end user. You can do that from any queue. Anything you put in the response folder, you can actually generate a zip, and it will actually send out an automatic email called an installment, which will allow them to be notified that they have an installment they can either download on the portal, they can come pick up, they can, that it will be coming to them in the mail, whatever it may be. So you don't have to take the request all the way through the workflow just to deliver response documents, because there will be cases where a response may take a much longer period of time than, say, 20 days or even 20 plus the extension. Well, now that we've approved this, we put it in the response folder, let's go ahead and complete this. Once this has been completed, it's going to move it into a billing queue. So the billing queue we could spend a lot of time on, but I will give you just kind of a high-level view of what we offer. You can actually integrate really with any third-party processing tool, whether it's pay.gov, whether it is another credit card payment processor. Once again, we leverage our APIs and that processor to pull in the actual data. Okay. Once again, this is something that that can be configured in many different ways. First off, you can add individual line items to this individual request. So maybe I want to charge them for a research fee. So let's just say we're going to say $100 for a research fee. I can add in a printing fee, whatever it may be. I also have the ability to generate a time sheet and a cost sheet, and I'll show that here in a minute what that looks like. And once you process that timesheet internally, it will add a line item to your individual request. As you can see here, though, you do have the ability to generate invoices with a single click. You also have the ability to view those invoices. You can actually email those invoices directly out to the end user, and once again, go through the normal payment processing. So your payment processing method today may be accepting checks through the accounting office. Well, the accounting office would let you know when X check is coming in, and let's just assume that's the most simplistic method. Let's just say that check you know, 1, 2, 3 came in and it paid for the $100. Now you have an even balance. And once again, you can see you can update these invoices and send them back out to the customer if they decide they need that. Once you've completed the billing step and you want to release this, you can actually hit complete and release it. I do want to mention that the billing step is an optional step. You do have the ability to configure it as a mandatory step. In this demo, if I did not collect payment at all, I could still release this if I chose to do so. Before I actually release this, I am going to show you one more time where we are in the process. It is now updated to the billing step in the overall workflow. So let's go ahead and complete this story by hitting complete, and it's actually going to release this. And since this was an electronic web portal request, it is going to send an email to the requester letting them know that their request has been released, and they can actually go right in and they can take a look at that. So let's go ahead and close out of this, and you'll notice 116 is now in the release queue. So if I go ahead and click quick search, you'll notice that it is now released, and they have the ability to now download their content. And we do this from a zip file, and the reason we do a zip file is because this could be 2 documents like it is today, or it could be hundreds of documents. So obviously you're not going to be able to email those. We do it from a zip perspective, so that way you can send a ton of content to the end user. We do have configuration to send as in native format or to convert to PDF on the actual response, and we convert ours to PDF in this environment or this demo. So if we go ahead and double check and take a look, this is the document that we are working on today, if you guys remember. So summarize, we have taken the FOIA request from the web portal all the way through processing it internally, and then to an actual response to the end user. The admin module is pretty robust in the fact that ArkCase allows you to configure many things from the front end. One of those being syncing your Active Directory. So day one, whether you use our cloud services, whether you use on-premise, whether you use a hybrid perspective, you have the ability to leverage your own Active Directory. You can leverage our Active Directory functionality or service. But once again, this can be configured by you and essentially pulled in or sync in your organization hierarchy or all of your different groups. Those groups, obviously, if you drive down into them, you'll see all the different users in those groups, mine being one of the users we use today. And from there, you actually can tie those groups to individual roles. So you can have one or many groups tied to a role. So as you can see here, I've got 2 groups tied to the admin role. We've got a role of officer, which we used Owen today. He's only tied to 1 group. So any of the users in that group have the role officer access. That role allows you to dig into individual privileges. So you can regulate all of your privileges for all of your different roles. Real-time, runtime, you can control access to the application. You also have the ability to restrict modules. So if you decided that you wanted to restrict modules, maybe you didn't want a subscriptions module. So you decide you don't want that. You have these individual roles that have access to it. Real time, you can restrict it now. There's no longer a subscription module. So that's how you can see the actual application will react to what you configure. We've got a lot of other things that you configure, everything from calendar integration. We do have Outlook integration for email and shared calendaring. We have document delivery functionality. It allows you to integrate the ability to send emails in and out of the system. We allow you to manage your email templates. We allow you to manage your overall email capability, whether it's using Exchange configuration, whatever it may be. You can manage your dashboard widgets. This is where all the widgets would show, even the ones that you extend and create, and give certain roles access and certain roles no access. Same thing from a reports configuration perspective, all the different reports and who has access. You also have a reports designer here. We don't have time to go into that today, but this is a full-fledged designer where you can drag and drop. Essentially, any metadata that is collected in the database can then be reported on and can be in tabular form, can be pie charts, line charts, those types of things. Some of the other things that you can do throughout the application, all of the labels, so maybe there's terminology that you're not used to or that you don't want to use. Maybe your terminology throughout the application is not FOIA, maybe it's public request. You can go in and you can change this information. Maybe you want to quickly change a module name. Well, you can go in here. See here, it's pretty robust. There's 772 just in the admin module alone, and you have many different modules you can change labels for. In like way, you can actually change all the drop-downs in the application. So today we talked a little bit about specific file types. So here are your request documents, audio documents, video documents. You can add all the document types you want. You would see in the drop-down there. You also have the ability to configure a lot around FOIA. There is a concept of being able to take things through the queues, how long they can stay in each of the queues, how much time does it take to complete overall. You can drive that information down to your specific rules, your timelines for each and every queue and the overall request here in the admin module. You also have the ability to basically set a request receive date automatically, or you can actually set it up where you have to manually enter that once you have, say, communicated with the customer to lock in the criteria and scope of their request, and then that's what kicks off the overall workflow. Like I said, you can change logos on the login page, the header page, the emails. You can configure what content repository you want. Ray alluded to anything CMIS compliant. And one I missed here was the correspondence templates. We have a lot of out-of-the-box correspondence templates for automatic denial of request, the request forms, appeal forms, a lot of things we didn't get a chance to get into today. With that being said, I've covered kind of a high-level view of what ArkCase FOIA has to offer, but I do want to leave some time for questions. So I'm going to go ahead and turn it back over to Lauren so she can actually review and field any questions that have come in during this demo. Thanks.
All right, thanks, Matt. All right, let's look. We have a couple questions that came in. First one is, if I need a system up and running in less than 3 to 6 months due to upcoming mandate, can that be done with ArkCase?
Absolutely. So I'll take that one. Thanks, Lauren. So that one's a pretty common question that we get. For example, we have implemented 2 customers that had the same concern. We actually implemented 2 in the last couple of months, and both of those were essentially 2 to 3 month engagements. Those were not directly out of the box, so we did do quite a bit of configuration. They wanted specific things done to meet exact requirements for them, and that was all done in essentially a two-month period. And that we're talking from the engagement of requirements to the sprints that we ended up doing, delivering specific things every couple of weeks, to essentially training, UAT, and go live in that time period. So yes, it can be done pretty easily with the ArkCase FOIA and the ease of use with the configuration.
Great, thanks, Matt. All right, let's see, we have at least time for at least one more question. Is smart technology built into ArkCase? If so, what is built in?
So when we talk about smart technology, I'd like to divide that maybe into 2 parts. One is AI components. We talked about the fact that we have, this whole media services framework that's integrated into our application. In that particular case, it's using the AWS transcribe engine that I talked about, which obviously drastically reduces the amount of time that folks will spend transcribing an audio or video file. But when I hear smart technology, I probably think about things like, requesting for suggestions as the person who's solving a particular case or addressing a particular case. Maybe, requesting deduplication is something that needs to be included as part of FOIA. It's a very, very common thing that we run into with our customers. So the 2 examples that I gave are things that are coming at the beginning of Q2 within our platform. And the main reason for all these smart technologies, AI, you can even bundle the robotic process automation, is that we're trying to affect the business of that particular workflow. So in this case being FOIA, by including all of these, we reduce the time that it takes to process that incoming FOIA request, and thereby help that agency or that department get to the answers faster.
Thanks, Ray. It looks like we have one last quick question here. Does ArkCase provide bulk redaction and exemption functionality?
Absolutely. So we didn't have a lot of time to spend on that, but hopefully I showed enough information. So we have redaction built into the viewer. You have the ability to redact a single redaction, multiple places on the actual document. You do have the ability to search and do batch redaction. We have the suggested or keyword searches essentially to find specific content and information to redact. So yes, we do have full redaction built into the application. No need to download it and say redact it in Adobe. That's one of our pain points we see with most of our customers. So it is all built into the application.
All right, thanks, Matt. And looks like we're just about at time, so I just want to wrap up and say thank you to everyone who registered and attended our FOIA Public Records webinar. We really appreciate you spending your time with us. If you had any additional questions that we were not able to get to during this specific webinar, please email us at sales@ourmedia.com, as you can also see on the screen. And we'd love to have a conversation with you outside of this webinar if you have any more detailed questions that we weren't unable to answer. Once again, I thank you all for your time, and I hope you have a great rest of your day.